Welcome, everyone, to Live at 5 about the great nonprofit talent search. I'm Jay Berger, partner at Morrison Berger, and your host for the hour. Our firm is a leading executive search firm in Southern California and nationally, and I am delighted to be here with our guests. Today, we're talking with leaders in the Southern California nonprofit community. We'll have each of our guests give us a quick introduction. If you have any questions, please ask them in the chat in YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever channel you're using. First up, we have Vanessa Bechtel, President and CEO of the Ventura County Community Foundation. Vanessa, tell us about yourself and the work you do at the foundation.
Jay, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today. And I was actually having a flashback to 8 years ago because it was your firm that did the executive search. And I'm so grateful to serve as the president and CEO of your community foundation, the Ventura County Community Foundation. Some interesting facts about the Community Foundation that people may not know. Last year, over $47 million was contributed to the Community Foundation to serve our community, and those dollars went right back out. The pandemic obviously impacted our nonprofit sector. It impacted individuals. We're still working on a number of wildfire responses, including the Thomas Hill and Woolsey wildfire. But basically, your community foundation envisions an engaged and thriving community inspired by growing generosity, and we specialize in connecting people, resources, and solutions to create lasting impact in our shared world.
Thank you, Vanessa. Next up is Regina Birdsell, President and CEO of the Center for Nonprofit Management. Regina, tell us more.
Well, thanks, Jay. So the Center for Nonprofit Management is essentially a business school. If you're working in the nonprofit sector, if you serve on a board, if you're in the corporate sector, the philanthropic sector, the government sector, we partner with you to create greater impact and reach. So what that really looks like is classes to learn management and leadership skills, a consulting practice to work on projects, to build networks. But the most exciting thing is that we spend every day working with people that want to make lives better for others. And so I have a great job.
Thank you. Next, we have Chris Essel, President and CEO of Southern California Grantmakers. Please introduce yourself, Chris.
Oh, happily. Again, thanks for having me. I echo Vanessa in that I think when I was changing careers some 10 years ago, I believe I came and met with you prior to joining Southern California Grantmakers. So thank you for the work you do for the nonprofit sector. Southern California Grantmakers is a membership association for professionals who work in the philanthropic arena. We have over 300 entities in our membership, and our mission is to mobilize philanthropy to learn and take bold actions with the purpose of creating a more equitable and just society. Our members include family foundations, traditional private foundations, community foundations like Vanessa's, corporate members, government members, and consultants across our 8 counties. We provide our members, a lot like Regina, with cutting-edge learning opportunities in a wide array of topic areas. And we also play a leadership role in our field. Our work involves hosting over 150 programs a year, including annual conferences, cohorts, peer groups. We also initiate collaborations and partnerships on a number of significant initiatives. So that's
great. Thank you. Next, Dr. Felicia Adams Kellum, President and CEO of St. Joseph Center, one of the LA County's largest homeless service providers. Felicia, tell us more.
Thanks so much for inviting me to participate. It's really an honor to be a part of this. And as you know, because you helped me get my job as well, St. Joseph Center has been serving low-income and homeless individuals for over 45 years. In fact, this is our 45th anniversary year, and we are so excited about an upcoming celebration to just honor the founding sisters, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, and the amazing staff who have worked for 45 years to save lives. We provide services on the west side of Los Angeles, in downtown LA, and in South Los Angeles. We serve about 14,000 people annually, and that increased significantly during the pandemic. We really endeavor to serve everyone with great honor, respect, and kindness. We believe that everyone deserves a home, a safe place to live, and food on the table. We have 4 main pillars of service: outreach and engagement, housing, mental health, and education and vocational services. I think the key to our work is just seeing everyone as a vital member of community, and the community that we serve is truly vulnerable and needs our help and support. And we look to our staff, the amazing staff at St. Joseph Center, to change lives, to save lives every day. So it's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have Brenda Zamzat, Chief Financial and Administrative Officer for the Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles. Brenda, you're on.
Thanks, Jay. You know, with the last name with 2 Z's, I'm used to coming up last. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Welcome, everyone. Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles was established in 1922, and we serve 32,000 girls in partnership with about 16,000 caring adult members and trained volunteers throughout the communities in Los Angeles County and parts of Kern and San Bernardino counties. We're the largest girl-serving nonprofit agency in Los Angeles, with programs in entrepreneurship, life skills, outdoor, and STEAM. The Girl Scouts mission is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. 60% of our girls throughout Los Angeles live in low-income, under-resourced communities. Driven by our desire to make an impact in more girls' lives, USGLA contributes significant resources to bringing the Girl Scout leadership experience to underserved communities. This year, over 10,000 girls participated in GSGLA from low-income zip codes, comprising 1/3 of our total membership. We have about 140 employees right now. We bring on another 125 seasonal employees for our summer programming, mostly our day and resident camps. And it's just a real pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Jay. I know you and I go way back in my corporate world. We used Morrison Berger for many of the nonprofit boards I serve on, and at Girl Scouts, we've used Morrison Berger. You're a great partner to us, so thank you.
Well, thank you all for great advertisement. And thanks everyone for being here. The big question today is a headache for most business people these days: how to find and retain top talent. And that's also a big headache for all of you nonprofit leaders. But we hope that we have some good news and some tips and tricks, or ideas at least, that we're going to share with you this evening. So I'd like to actually start with the first question for Vanessa. You are basically the representative tonight for Ventura County. So please talk about the size and the scale of the nonprofit sector in Ventura County and how it has been impacted by the pandemic.
You know, it's so interesting. And I will tell you, I'm so grateful, frankly, to be with the Center for Nonprofit Management, Regina, today, and Chris and the rest of the panelists, because I think we learn from each other. And I certainly follow a lot of the data and statistics coming from the South, too. I mean, unfortunately for all of us, the data is just not as clear. From 2020 to 2022, in February, Ventura County is down about 10,600 workers, and that's about 2.5% of the total workforce. The Ventura County community nonprofit sector is about 16,000 employees. Now, the bulk of those nonprofits are 10 or fewer employees. So that's about 86%. And the majority are in the social safety sector. So it's hard because obviously people are not just resigning from their jobs and that's the only reason. In fact, we've noticed, especially in the nonprofit sector, that there's been retirements, obviously need to leave the workforce for home care for families, personal health concerns, and then there's those that are holding out for better pay and conditions. But bottom line, I have a lot of data. I guess when I think about the nonprofit sector in Ventura County, we would say that probably about 5% of the workforce is currently out of the nonprofit sector right now, down about 800 to 1,000 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to continue along those lines with Regina. The Center for Nonprofit Management just released the 2022 sector snapshot, and staffing challenges is at the top of the list. What are you finding?
Jay, it's just like Vanessa said, and it's not unique to the nonprofit sector. For the last decade, our sector has grown 25%. The bad news there is that that's because there's a lot of need we're trying to meet. The good news is those are a lot of good jobs doing important work. But, what we're hearing, and we just released our snapshot last week, retention, burnout, that is huge. For the longest time, we had purpose on our side, that people could be part of something that mattered. Right now, they're moving around. They're asking questions about, what kinds of benefits, what sort of salary increases, how are we keeping up with the cost of living as we worry about the next recession. And so we're definitely seeing that, it's pretty competitive out there on the recruitment side. There's as much movement into organizations as there is out of organizations. What we hear from executive directors is working really hard so that people feel valued. But that's not necessarily, for people on the ground. Boy, Felicia lives this every day doing the work. They have options. And so there's pressure on all of us to figure out how to pay competitively, how to add to the benefit package. It's definitely a top of the list, far and away, very different this year than it was a year or two ago. And we've been tracking this. We started this in 2009 during the recession, and what we've seen is so much more dramatic in 2022.
Yeah.
Chris, continuing along the lines of retention of employees, how important do you think for organizational culture is in the retention of employees?
Oh, I think as the others have alluded to, it's absolutely essential. It is hard work to work in this field, and people need that time and space. We need to really have a caring culture, and we make sure our staff doesn't burn out. We've worked hard at SCG to develop an equity-focused mindset around our work. We have an equity committee, we have a culture committee, and bringing staff together to help design how the organization functions and what we ought to be working on, and providing more of a shared leadership model has been really essential to our ability to retain our staff. Since I started, we've been able to grow the organization by about 3 times. So it's allowed us the opportunity for staff to grow in their positions and try out new skills and develop new programs and ideas. And with a shared leadership mindset, they get to try and take risks and be bold in their work. And it's been very effective for us. But we're also a staff that is very diverse, and part of the retention is our focus on DEI and being able to bring staff in a way that they have a full voice at the table, and we're not just a hierarchical organization. I came from the corporate world, the way that corporate tends to be structured. So we've had good success with retention. COVID has been a bit of a problem because people have relocated to other places. So that's cost us an employee or two.
I want to continue with that line of questioning, but why don't we take a quick break and watch a short video provided by Chris and her team at Southern California Grantmakers. Welcome back, everyone. Our last question was to Chris, and she was talking about equity issues. And I know Valicia and I have talked about that as well. Valicia, can you talk about what steps St. Joseph Center has taken to further equity?
Thanks for asking. I'm really proud of the work we've done over the years and just hearing how at California Grantmakers there's been so much change. And for St. Joseph Center, the same is true. When I started 14 years ago, we had a staff of 100, and today we have almost 400 staff. We now have a staff also that is reflective of the people we serve. I will say that 10 years ago, 60% of our staff were not of color, and today 75% of our staff are people of color, and 50% report some type of lived experience of trauma or difficulty or homelessness. So that's a very real shift for our work. Now, what that also means is it's not just about diversity. It's also about making sure that our programs inspire people to areas of leadership who have not maybe traditionally been in leadership as people of color, folks with backgrounds in incarceration, of homelessness. All of those folks are now within our ranks as employees, leading our organization with great empathy and insight and understanding of what does it take to find housing after years of homelessness. What does it mean to be a victim of domestic violence and have to care for your children and not lose them to the system? So many of those folks with that deep, rich lived experience now help me and my executive team lead the agency to really being responsive to needs. We've done a lot of things to make ourselves open to folks with lived experience. One, looking at backgrounds and forgiving some of the past offenses that people have in their histories, and also using the experience of homelessness, of incarceration, alongside what we use for people with academic backgrounds. So it's like, if you have experience, your experience may not be academic in nature. It may be life lessons of pain and poverty. And we give those different ways of getting experience a lot of equal credit. And we think that's deserving. We do a lot of unique things, including during the pandemic, paying people hazard pay, because so many of the folks we know who were on the front lines were people of color who were struggling to stay safe themselves and pay the rent and keep food on the table. So as people put their lives in jeopardy and stood out there to make sure that people were getting housed during the pandemic, as we opened one of the first COVID hotels, or making sure that people were coming off the boardwalk, as we housed 213 people off the boardwalk this summer, we also wanted to honor our staff, our frontline staff, with hazard pay and a way to stay safe and take care of their families as well.
Thank you. Brenda, given the impact of the pandemic and the changes we've all had to make, can you speak to how Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles has handled this in terms of retention and what part equity plays in that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jay. One of the things about working for Girl Scouts is we tend to attract a lot of alumni. So many of the people on the staff who work for us were former Girl Scouts themselves. That's been one, I think, advantage to us in the marketplace when it comes to finding and recruiting talent. But in terms of retention, 21 was really challenging. We were definitely a victim of the Great Resignation. I think in November and December alone, we had at least 10 to 12 vacancies at any one given time. And for a staff of only 140, that's pretty big gap to fill. We saw that continue in January, and then it's really tapered off. So from February until now, things have really calmed down and people are staying put. And I think that has to do with a lot of the effort that we put in last year, realizing that, things were getting challenging and super competitive in the marketplace. We really spent a lot of time at the senior management level talking about shifting gears and really focusing on our employees and our talent. I think, like many nonprofits, we work and everyone does the jobs of 2 or 3 people. And I think we really, recognized that, acknowledged it, and really made an effort to recognize and thank our employees for continuing to contribute to the good work that we do. We rolled out a professional development training program for 40 of our supervisors and managers to provide some additional professional development training above and beyond what they were already receiving. But I think the most important thing of all is that we determined early on during the pandemic that we were going to be as flexible as possible. And I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of Girl Scout alums working for us. So you can imagine our workforce is probably about 95% women, 95% female, and many of our families and parents had children, homeschooling in the last 2 years. So we really tried to be as flexible as possible with work hours and assignments and tasks that needed to be done. And we really came down a lot easier on our staff and really wanted to show them how important and valuable they were to us. And so we allowed a lot of flexibility, and I think that really was appreciated. And we have continued till now. We have not gone back to the office. We are going to remain hybrid. And we have staff coming in maybe 1 day a week. Some of the teams are gathering for team meetings and collaborative purposes, but the majority of our workforce is still continuing to work remote and will be. We've gotten rid of 3 of our offices, and we are really transitioning to a new way of doing business, and it's working. And I think our staff are really appreciative of the flexibility that we've given them. I think those are all really important. And then the last point I want to make is we've started having discussions that we're saying, let's be brilliant at the basics. Let's really challenge ourselves. What are we doing that isn't critical to our mission anymore? What can we stop doing? And so that we're really focusing on what's really important in meeting our mission and serving the girls of Los Angeles. And those are really interesting conversations because people, don't want to give up a lot, but they're also open to what can we do so that we can be brilliant at the basics. And I think that's going to be an interesting ongoing discussion for us.
Well, thank you for that. And I think I speak for almost everyone who's watching this. Please don't give up the cookie sales. Now,
No problem.
I'm curious. I'd like to hear from the others of you if you're also still working either remotely or hybrid, and if you've loosened up on the arrangements that you have for staff. Vanessa, you want to tackle that first?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the best parts of being a part of the nonprofit sector is I think we are really, for the most part, really great at beginning with listening and, listening to our teammates, listening to the clients that we're serving, listening to one another. And absolutely, that flexible space, we've proven that for many of us in the nonprofit sector, our work can be done remotely and in person. Obviously, there's certain things that you have to do in person. And to that extent, I think one of the things that we can really be aware of is, the rising price of gas. We've instituted for those team members that have to be here on site every day, we've actually instituted a gas stipend to really help alleviate some of those painful points, right? That extra $100. But bottom line, I think one of the things that makes our industry so important to the actual workforce in general is that we understand that there's really 8 forms of wealth, and the monetary compensation is one of them, but there are so many more components of that. Frankly, the inner wealth of doing good and the charge really helping to connect our team members with the impact that they're having as a field, I think is critical. And then understanding that family wealth is really important, and how we can show up for those especially single parents right now. This has been a brutal last 2 years. I was thinking as I was listening to Girl Scouts, being talked about, I think about Peter Drucker and the fact that Girl Scouts founding CEO or turnaround CEO was one of the premier experts on creating a workforce that really takes care of their employees and values that connection. And I think we've continued in that spirit as a sector all along.
Thank you. Regina, did you go to remote also?
Well, we went remote on March 17th, and we have, and the silver lining in all of this has been that, like Vanessa was just saying, we found that our clients, our numbers grew because it was easier to access our programs because they could do it from their laptop. But in terms of our staff, it's really been a bit of a roller coaster. If we were talking about this, I don't know, it's hard to keep track now. When we thought the pandemic was over, I think it was at the end of the summer, and people were telling us, we survey our team about what they want to do. And, they kind of wanted to spend some time with each other. They wanted to start to have staff meetings in place. Chris and I are neighbors in our building at the California Endowment. And, we've had vacant space now for 2 years. And it's over time, they've changed their minds. And some of it was driven by variants and worrying about being exposed again. And some of it was, we find that we can be more productive at home. And, they want, and then others wanted to come to the office where they could have quiet. So we've had to just really be nimble. And then there's the added piece, which is we're finding that some clients are ready to get back in person. They want to be in the room together. And so we need to be able to be responsive to that. And some prefer never to drive downtown again. And they would prefer to work remotely. So we've got kind of 3-dimensional chess at this time. But we're pretty clear that there's no going back, that we've learned to work remotely, that there's some benefits, that we even can build team, kind of that esprit de corps without being in the room together, and that people appreciate the flexibility to really focus on the outcomes instead of the hours, the start times and the finish times. And so I don't see us really going back. I think for, our office space, we're not really seeing that people need desks and spaces designated to them. That there's more flexibility around why we meet in person. So, but as a leader, I can tell you, it's trying to keep up with what do they say they want, and then we try to create policies, and then something happens, and then we have to revisit. So we're sort of landing in the let's stay nimble, and so that's probably where we'll stay.
Chris, since you're a neighbor.
Yes, I was in the other day and there was nobody in your suite.
There you go. And I miss that. I miss seeing
There
Chris.
was only one other person in my suite. So.
Exactly.
It was so fascinating to me as the leader of the organization and having been in the corporate world, and I also had a government role, a leadership role, to see how much we could all trust each other. Like we didn't need to be in the office at 9 and why is so-and-so late? I mean, that's all over now. And we produced twice as many programs in the first year of COVID, and we had 3 times as many people watching them. So the success ratio in that first year taught us that we do not need to spend that time in the car every day. My own commute's 45 minutes to an hour each way. And I agree with Regina. I'm much more productive doing my work from home, yet I miss people. And I think we do have to create those opportunities to come together. And in the sector of philanthropy, it's very much a relational type of space. And we've rode on the fact that we've had these relationships we've built for many years. And I do think we're focused now on how to create those opportunities to bring people together so they can reconnect and share ideas and create new partnerships and new ways of working together. So it'll be an experiment. It'll be a roller coaster ride. But for the most part, I agree, Regina, it'll never be the same.
And Felicia already talked a little bit about this, and I know you have to have frontline people working, and you talked about hazard pay, and that's another way to approach it. So thank you for that. At Morrison Berger, we have only 9 people. We are hybrid. People can work as much as they want in the office, but they have to be here 2 days a week at least. The only real other thing we've changed is we're now dog friendly, and people bring their dogs into the office, which is really fun. Today we had a golden retriever. With that, I think we're going to take our next break. Thanks for everyone watching, and for our panelists, stay tuned for more.
St. Joseph Center has been serving low-income and homeless individuals for over 40 years. Here on the West Side, we're the lead service provider for the coordinated entry system, both for individuals and for families. So it means we take the lead in bringing a number of service providers together, faith community, business community, and the like, to ensure that no one falls through the cracks.
St. Joseph Center is great with connecting people to services. We give them hygiene kits, food. We keep them stable enough so we can find housing.
It doesn't cost anything to be a friendly face. Just shake someone's hand. It doesn't hurt anything. It helps. It helps us. It helps you.
We brand new furniture, not no cheap stuff. The whole works. St. Joseph Center did that for us.
If not me, who? If not now, when?
Take one.
We are powerful.
We are problem solvers.
We are community activists.
We are sisters.
And tomorrow we're going to change the world. Yes, I am strong.
Yes, I am a leader.
Yes, we are.
Yes, I am.
Sí, somos.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am a Girl Scout.
Just as we were experiencing a new feeling of creativity and fun, New West Symphony and the rest of the world was unexpectedly silenced. Uncertainty drove us all to stretch beyond our comfort zones, and we each experienced a deep need to connect. And so, we welcomed new practices. Young and old toiled with emerging technology, and we turned to our enterprising musicians to chart a new course. Because of you, we were able to gather safely in an empty hall with bright lights and cameras to make music together. And we saw that we were certainly not alone, because culture and tradition transcend adversity. And you reached out to support us. You made it possible for us to lift up our musicians. You helped us realize why we create. You were there in those moments when our work helped us to connect and draw each other near. Thank you for being on this journey with us. The new normal isn't as much of a challenge as it is an opportunity to enrich, entertain, and educate our growing community. With your help, we can make this the best possible place to live.
Welcome back, everyone. Actually, I really enjoyed watching those promos, and I wish we'd see more of that on television instead of the repetitive car ads and pharmaceutical ads. So maybe we should get some more freebies for you out there. I'd like to continue the conversation, but move to another question. And I'm curious how you've all dealt with this. Have you all mandated vaccinations for your staff? And if so, has that been a deterrent in terms of the hiring of people? Maybe, Felicia, we should start with you.
I have a noisy dog. I think you better go to someone and then I'll come back.
I think your dog is just trying to make a statement. So, okay, Brenda.
Okay, the answer is yes, we did. Back in October, November, we rolled out a mandatory vaccine policy for all of our GSGLA staff and contractors and anyone who works with us. The primary purpose for that was at the time, vaccines had not yet were available for children. And since we primarily deal with K through 12, we felt it was critical that our staff keep themselves and the girls and everyone around us as safe as possible. So we mandated a policy, we came down with a vaccine policy. We rolled it out, we gave staff plenty of notice. It was a lot easier than we thought. We thought we were going to get, a fair amount of pushback. And out of the 140 employees, we probably received about 5 requests for accommodation, which we considered very, very seriously and got good legal advice on that. And we're able to work through that. And I'm really happy to say that we had nearly 100% compliance with our policy. It's a little tricky with new hires, and this just came up yesterday. We're hiring a lot of new staff for the summer, and we are navigating through when is the appropriate time to actually, talk about the vaccine policy. It's in all of our job descriptions, but surprisingly enough, we're getting people who are getting further along in the process than we'd like, and we're trying to navigate our way through that legally. But absolutely, we have a vaccine policy. So, yep.
I think I'm ready now. He's settled down.
Okay.
Yes, my new colleague, a Rhodesian Ridgeback. He has a big bark, he's a beautiful heart. The vaccine policy issues are for all of us a challenge. We felt that with so many people that we serve who are vulnerable, that we absolutely had to have a vaccine policy. And it's been tough overall to get people to understand why we have to have a mandate of that nature. But I'm happy to say that the vast majority of our staff accepted it, understood it, really saw it as mission aligned and stayed with us. I think as we move on and there's the booster shots, then you have to indicate, how do you define fully vaccinated? For those with religious beliefs that don't align with the vaccine policy, we ask them to update and make sure that we have their documentation. But again, it's just a real challenging time with so many diverse beliefs and experiences out there. I'm just glad and proud of my staff to understand that it's about staying safe. We have so many staff members with young children who can't be vaccinated. And so we sort of see this as staying safe together.
Regina?
Yeah, we don't have the same kind of client-facing experiences that you do, Felicia. But what we discovered was that our team felt that it was important that we were all vaccinated so that we could keep each other safe. And so we expected more pushback than we got, and it's gone easier than we thought.
Great. Chris?
Before we had to create a policy, we found out everybody was vaccinated, so we didn't have to take that any further. The thing is that we have programs, and the few that we've had in person have been in the California Endowment building, and the California Endowment is a healthcare foundation. So they have a policy that you have to show a vaccination card and get your temperature taken before you can attend a meeting. So we are dealing with it on a programmatic level, and should we do programs outside the building, we're going to have to create a policy that applies then.
Vanessa?
And yeah, Jay, I will tell you 3 things on this. Number one, I am grateful to be vaccinated and boosted. And of course, many people have mild cases after being vaccinated and boosted, but I personally was out for about a month. And really, it hit me very hard. And so I'm grateful to have been vaccinated and boosted because I think it saved my life, frankly. So I'm grateful to be here. At the beginning, I was really surprised that about 60% of my team was not planning on being vaccinated and boosted. But, we've been convening with the County of Ventura and our Complete Count Committee from the 2020 census every Monday, the Complete Reach Committee that's been all about vaccine outreach and education. And we've actually reached over 150,000 members of our community. And I just will say, in the process of doing this and getting facts to our community and to our team, 100% of my team was vaccinated. And I think that was really just a testament to access of information and really giving people the ability to get transparent and information from trusted messengers. And so that was a really powerful testament. And I just have to give a shout out because we've just recently crunched the numbers, and because of the outreach of our Complete Committee, together, I think we've saved over 300 lives, which means that 2,700 immediate family members aren't having to grieve the loss of a loved one.
That's a wonderful statistic to be able to quote. Thank you. I'm also curious, because we've experienced this, interviewing using video conference, Zoom, WebEx, Teams, whatever you happen to use. How has that impacted the hiring process for you? Brenda.
Sorry, Jay, were you asking me?
I was asking you if
Okay.
or how interviewing candidates via video conference, how that's impacted the hiring process.
I actually think it really is relatively the same as if you were in person. We just do everything via Zoom, and it's basically the same. The only thing is you're not, walking in and shaking someone's hand and having them sit down in your office physically, but the same questions are asked, and the same thing happens. We're not doing the pre-recorded videos and any of that sort of recruiting. We actually, the supervisor, hiring manager, interviews the candidate, via Zoom, and I think it works great. You don't have to worry about people being late, and commute issues in LA. You don't have to worry about that, and no-shows have surprisingly been really, really low. I've heard horror stories from others though, so I don't know if we're unique in that, but I have heard that people not showing up for interviews has been problematic, as well as people getting hired and not showing up on the first day. I've heard that that's sort of a little trend that's going on as well.
Do any of you have any horror stories to share with us?
I don't have a horror story. You just reminded me, though, that we had a funny situation because we grew significantly since the pandemic. And so probably a third of our staff right now, we hadn't met each other in person. And we hosted an event in October, a bonding event for our team, and everybody kind of giggled because some people were taller, shorter, not what they expected because they've only seen that sort of Brady Bunch picture. It didn't matter for the working together, but everybody went, "Oh my gosh, you're taller," or "Oh my God." It was just really kind of a fun little reminder that we've lived in this, suspended reality for a while now.
And I will just add that I really hate doing Zoom interviews. I really do. And I don't know why. I'll have to give it a lot of thought, but my gut tells me I really enjoy that human interaction that is outside of the formal questions, where you get to really get to know someone on a human level. And I have 2 open positions. I keep promoting my executive assistant. So I will just give a shameless plug. I am looking for an executive assistant, and we have another open position. And just doing Zoom has been really hard for me to, it's not that it's impossible to build connection, but in some instances, it's much more casual than I would prefer on a first interview. And other times it's so formal that you really don't get those snippets into the things that really people find motivating and important to them.
I think it's a really good point you make, Vanessa. We've had to make it work. I've hired a chief financial officer. I've hired a chief program officer via Zoom, had never seen them in person. It's just really wild. But Zoom does allow for a bit of inclusiveness. Like, we can invite more people to the space to introduce and ask questions. And we found that very helpful. And I also have found myself just lingering, like staying on the Zoom, because I'm still back to back. But if I'm on Zoom and I really like someone, like, I take the extra 20 or 30 minutes, and having that extra time a little less formal after the questions, it's been nice, because then I'm like, wow, I really enjoyed connecting with them. I want to know more about them. So I've kind of used that lingering feeling as a good sense that maybe that person's going to be a good fit.
I can totally connect with that too. I think that's a great point as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. When we first started in the pandemic, we found that we needed to write a blog about how to interview on Zoom, because we had people interviewing in their bedrooms with their bed unmade and clothes strewn all over the place, with a partner pedaling a stationary bike behind. And of course, we've been Zoom bombed by children, dogs, and other animals. So that was kind of funny, but nevertheless, it kind of interrupted the interview. And we've also found, not so funny, that during the pandemic, we've had more people pull out of searches. And we think, but can't for sure tell, that part of that has to do with Zoom interviewing, and maybe the person is not as invested in the opportunity because they didn't have to drive anywhere. They didn't meet you face to face. I think there's also a situation where people are in more searches simultaneously. And so they may be pulling out for that reason as well. But I'm curious, have any of you found some of those same issues?
We've noticed, I think at this point, more that the job market is it's tougher to find candidates. So when we were filling a position earlier on in 2020, we had 90 applicants for it. We had a position last year that we had about 3 or 4 applicants for. So what I've noticed more, I think, relates to the job market in general and the fact that there's more opportunities out there for people. I do think in interviewing on Zoom lacks a certain dimension that you get when you're human to human in a room. And I miss that and look forward to those being conducted in person going forward.
I'm also curious, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm really interested in all of your experience with people wanting to move into the nonprofit sector from the for-profit world. And I know at least a couple of you have done that yourselves. So, Chris, I think you talked about that. You want to start this conversation?
Sure. I mean, it's a very different space. I have been quite honored to be in this role and be in a place after living through the world of government and a corporate entity for 30 years to create an environment that's very different. And as I said earlier, less hierarchical. I've had to learn to be a different kind of leader in this environment that some of the others have talked about, how important it is to listen to your staff. It's not about giving direction and standing up and saying this is the way it is, but actually picking up the knowledge, the experience, and the voices of others that help you shape how you move the organization forward. There's more boldness, there's more risk-taking, there's more trust that is there between staff and managers and the team as a whole. It's of course very different having a board of directors if you're a CEO when you come into these positions or the senior level staff that has to deal with the board, because you're in between folks who drop in to be leaders and some spend more time than others, and your day-to-day world. And how do you navigate between what the board's role is and what your role is as CEO, and what do you need and want from the board, and when are they engaging more, let's say, in the managerial or executive function that you hold. So that is one of the shifts that I was on board, so I know what it was like to be a board member for a CEO, and now the hat's on my head, and it's a different terrain to navigate for sure.
Brenda, I know you made that change too. What about Girl Scouts? Do you hire people from the for-profit sector?
We most certainly do, especially now in this competitive marketplace. I've been at Girl Scouts for 12 years. This was my first paid nonprofit job. I sat on boards and was involved in a lot of community organizations over the years when I was in the corporate world. And, I was always very involved in the community. And one of the things that I always tell people when they reach out to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about transitioning into the nonprofit community, what advice do you have? And the first thing I always say is, have you served on a nonprofit board in the past? Because if you haven't, it's really a bit of a culture shock. And, I press pretty hard to make sure people understand what is different about it. I think it's a wonderful thing. I do not regret for one moment making the switch. I work for Girl Scouts. It's one of the biggest recognized brands in the world. But I go to bed every night knowing that I actually did a little part to make a difference in the world. And that just makes me feel good. It makes my heart happy. And I know that through the pandemic, a lot of people were questioning their careers and what they were doing with their life and their purpose in life. And a lot of people did consider moving from corporate America into the nonprofit world. And I'm like, come on over. We welcome all the talent we can get, right? And but it's not for everyone. And I know there's probably some corporate folks listening in on this call tonight. And the best advice I can have is sit on a nonprofit board, take a leadership position, serve on committees, be the board chair if you can. and get that expertise, because nonprofit governance is very different than working in the corporate world, but it's incredibly fulfilling, and it just feels good. So there's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I think we have sort of come to the end of our time, but I want to thank all of you. You've been amazing and wonderful, as just I knew you would be. And thank you for participating in this fun panel. So that's a wrap, folks. Be sure to tune in again every month on the 3rd Tuesday of the month for more Live at 5.